Now it's time for lesson 44 from the 4th grade Excel, and we're going to be taking a look at union and intersection of sets today. And before we get started, I'd like to get you started on a little joke here. And the joke is, how do prisoners get a hold of each other? How do prisoners get a hold of each other? Okay, so stay tuned for the answer to that later on in the show. For right now, we're going to take a look at two words that you need to understand. These are two words that you're going to learn in this lesson. You have to remember these words. You might want to write them down someplace so you can remember the difference. Intersection and union. Okay, the intersection is the point where two things meet. It's what they both have in common. A union is everything that you have in two different groups or three different groups or whatever. It's all of them. Intersection is only what they have in common. Let me give you a little memory aid to help you to remember the difference between these words. Intersection starts with an I, and union starts with a U. This I is really skinny. There's not much to it. It's just skinny and not much to it. And the intersection is going to have answers that aren't much to them. They're going to be a smaller group of numbers. The U is much wider. It takes up a lot of space. And the union takes up more space than the intersection. There's more numbers that are going to be in the U than in the I. More in the union than in the intersection. So the intersection is only the numbers that are in all of whatever sets you're looking at. So in this first one, they want to know, it says that contains only the numbers that are inside all three figures. Let's take a look at these numbers here. This number 7 is inside the circle. It's not inside any of the other shapes. It's not inside all three of those. And then this number 3, it's only inside the rectangle. It's not inside more than one. The number 4 is inside only the triangle, so that couldn't be the intersection. The intersection, remember, are in all three of them. Now the number 1's kind of interesting. It's in the rectangle and the triangle, but is it in the circle? No, it's not. So that's not going to be the intersection. And the number 2 is inside the triangle and the circle, but is it inside of the rectangle? No, it's not. The 5 is in all three of these shapes. So 5 would be the intersection. What's the union of the numbers in these? Well, it's all those numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 7. All the numbers that are in the shapes that you see above. All right, this next part that you see is not on your lesson. So you're just going to watch and pay attention to this, and hopefully it'll help you to remember intersection and union a little bit better. It says the union of sets A and B results in a set that contains all the items in either A or B. Remember, union, that U is wider, so we're going to get more numbers in there. So the union, and it has a little picture down here, the union of A and B, all the numbers from both of them. And that would be a 0, a 1, see there's a 1 in both of them, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, an 8, both of them have an 8, and a 9. They show that to you right down here. The green is kind of like the B, and the yellow's like the A. The union is the numbers, all the numbers there. Okay, and then let's see, the next one says the intersection of sets A and B results in sets that contains only the items in both A and B. So the intersection of A and B, well, do we have a 0 in both A and B? No, so that's not going to be in the intersection. Do we have a 1 in both A and B? Yes, so 1 is going to be in the intersection. Do we have a 4 in both of them? No. How about a 6? Is there a 6? No. How about an 8? Yep, there's an 8 in both of them. So the intersection is 1 and 8. That's what it shows to you right here. Notice how much smaller that group is than that group. Just like the I doesn't take up as much space as the U. A null or empty set is one that contains no items. The intersection of sets B and C results in a null set. The intersection, okay, so let's take a look at that. B and C. Here's B, here's C. The intersection of those. The 1, there's no 1 over here. In fact, let me get rid of all of this stuff off of here. All right, there we go. And let's see. Let's take a look at that null set between B and C, the intersection of B and C. So here's B, here's C. What's the intersection? Remember, it's the small group of numbers that both are in both sets. Is there a 1 in both sets? No. Is there a 3? No. 5? No, there's no 5. 8? No, no 8. 9? No, nothing. There's no overlap between B and C. And then the intersection of A and C is not a null set because it contains a 0. 0 does count as a number. So you can see A and C both have a 0. All right, what I'd like you to do now is think about the answers to these, pause the lesson, and think, what would you write on this line? What does this diagram represent that we just studied up here? We know the first diagram represents the union of A and B because it's all the numbers that are in A and all the numbers that are in B, and that's what we see right here. So I want you to pause the video and think about what would you write on these 3 lines down here. Okay, you should have already thought this through. This next one is 1 and 8, which we know was the intersection here, 1 and 8. That's the oops, that didn't work out too well. Intersection of A and B. Can't really fit it on there. And then, how about this one here? Well, there's no numbers that are in common. All these numbers are here, all these numbers here, none of them overlap. And we saw that that is the intersection of B and C because none of them are in both of those here. Intersection of B and C. And then the intersection of A and C, they both have a 0 right there, 0 there. So that's the intersection of A and C. Alrighty, that's pretty sloppy, but it's kind of hard for me to write so small on there with my stylus. Sorry about that. Alright, hopefully you understand this now and you can give some of these a shot. I'd like you to just do number 1 to get you started. We're looking for the union of A and C. Write the numbers here. I want you to put parentheses at the beginning and the end. Make sure you put commas in between the numbers. Pause the video, do number 1, then turn it back on to see the solution. All right, so A and C, we're looking for the union. Here's A, here's C, and union, that's that wider letter. It starts union there. And so we want all the numbers that are in both of them. And you don't write any of the numbers twice. So if you got this wrong, go ahead and fix it. 0, and then I'm going to try to do them in order. 1 would be the next highest number. And over here I see a 4, comma 4. And then a 6 right there, 6. And then there's a 7 right there, so we'll put a 7. And then there's an 8 right there, comma 8. And then we have 3 more numbers here that we haven't gotten to yet. 10, 12, and 14, parentheses at the end. And that is the union of A and C. All the numbers that you see from both A and C. This is tricky for some kids. So if you missed that one, fix your answer and see if you can just keep learning this stuff and getting caught up on it, okay? So go ahead and try 2 through 4. Pause the video, turn it back on when you're ready to see the solutions. So for number 2, they're asking for the union of C and D. So here's C and here's D. Union, again, is all the numbers. 0. We got a 1 over there. Got a 3 right there. 6. Now 7 comes next. 7's in both. I don't have to write it twice. And you got an 8. And then you have all these that are left. 10, 12, and 14 with a parentheses at the end. All right, you should have already done number 3 as well. Intersection of A and D. So we're looking at this one and this one. What do they have in common? Intersection, that I is so skinny, we're just looking for a couple of numbers here probably. So we're looking at 0. It's in both sets. Is there a 1? Yep, there's a 1 in both sets. Oops, I forgot my parentheses. And there's no 3, 4, 6. Oh, look, there's a 6 in both sets there. Okay, how about 7? No. 8. Oh, there's an 8 in both sets. So you should have had all 4 of those numbers. Fix your answers if you have a mistake there. And then how about intersection of C and D? That would be what these two have in common. Well, they both have a 0 and a 7, and it looks like that's about it. So 0 and 7 are the intersection of C and D. All right, here is 3 more problems, 5, 6, and 7. Pause the video, do all 3 of those. Turn it back on when you're ready to see what the solutions are. All right, you should have already done 5, 6, and 7, and I'm just going to show you the answers right here. Fix your answers if any of them are wrong. There they are, okay? And it'd be nice if you had parentheses around these as well. And make sure you have commas in there. It's also kind of nice when you write them in order. It makes it a little bit easier to do your consensus as well if you have the numbers written from small to large. All right, and I asked you a question at the beginning, how do prisoners get a hold of each other? And of course the answer is they use their cell phones. Cell phones, you get it? Okay.